very dense paper. I think I'm sure whoever has read his work would see the density of his work. There would be documentation, there would be arguments, and so we would like to thank him. And so I think I would now like to invite Dr. Sukanya Sarvadhikari. Uh, she works at the interface of anthropology of religion, anthropology of embodiment, religious studies, and philosophy. She tries to locate questions of the body, senses, intuition, experience, imagination, and sacrality in the interstices between everyday lives and strong philosophical traditions. In her first work, she did an intensive ethnography among different kinds of Bengal Vaishnavas, focusing on diverse experiences of religious place and discourses of sensory apprehension of divine affect. Her book, The Place of Devotion, Citing and Experiencing Divinity in Bengal Vaishnavism, University of California Press, was published in 2015. She is actually, in fact, one of the very few scholars who directly works on areas related to what we are talking about, the main focus of the conference. So, Sukanya, welcome to the conference, and please start your proceedings. Please present your paper. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I will, I'm very grateful to be part of this collective here. And without too many, spending too much time, I'll directly start reading out my paper. I'm sorry to have changed the title a couple of times. The final one reads as Jagatnath as Pranavatanudharam, reading the Nath yogic body and Puri as homologous kshetras of Om resonance. I hope I'm audible to everybody. My first section is titled Nath, Jagannath, and the Shankhakshetra complex. Understanding Jagannath's divinity has been one of the most challenging tasks for religion specialists. Is Jagannath a Vaishnava representation of Narasimha and his consort Lakshmi, a tantric divination of Shiva Shakti, the fourfold extension of a spiritual cosmos, that's Jagannath, Balabhadra, Subhadra, Sudarshan, or Gita's Purushottam, the cosmic Purusha beyond the gross Akshar and subtler Akshar life states and present in the body's secret nerves, that sun, moon, fire, and breaths. Here I'm mainly alluding to Gita's 15th chapter, the Purushottam Yoga. While literature has variously attributed these dimensions to Jagannath's imagination, I argue that a most significant, if not essential, conceptualization remains underemphasized. The deity as a direct embodiment of Onkar or Pranav. Jagannath's understanding as a manifestation of the original cosmic sound or Nad, Om, itself born of Purush Prakriti sexual union, encompasses all the diverse and syncretic possibilities of imagining the deity. So Shiva Shakti, Narasimha Lakshmi, Purushottam, a fourfold expression, all derive from the basic tantric notion that a divine male-female energy union results in the first vibration, Om, which expands in four forms and constitutes all material and subtle life. This life force breathes inside the body as outside through empty vacuous orifices, and this hollow breath sound ability anticipates Jagannath's form as Shunya Purush. The divine as hollow sound, the material geography of Puri's seascape merging in the vacant sky horizon, and its gushing air water deep, void like wave resonance tie the ontology of Jagannath's Dham with his Shunyam Purnam, or cosmic wholeful persona. Shunyam Purnam also incorporates the devotional yogic body, its airing, hearing, sounding, ear, mouth, and breathing cavities united with the deity and his landscape. In analyzing Jagannath as Pranav or Om, the Shunya Nad metaphysics more precisely connects Jagannath with the powerful Nath cult's imaginations of the human body as itself a sonic divine, with emphasis on the voids of ears, throat cavity, head, and special nerve interiors. So I analyze a distinct Orison Bhakti landscape in Nath yogic appropriations of Jagannath, associated myths and lores, mantras, esoteric textual traditions, and congruent geographies of the Nath yogic tantric body, Jagannath's corporeality, and Puri's pilgrimage cosmos. I have also conducted some amount of fieldwork in Orissa's Nath ashrams in Jagatsinghapur and Kendrapara districts. My conceptualizations of Jagatnath as the archetypal Nath and Shunya Purush as the congealment of Om seek to make some original contributions to the study of Orissan devotion. My primary material includes the study of texts, especially The Purushottam Kshetra Mahatya of the Skanda Puran, describing for the first time Puri's cosmological layout, and the Nath text, Gorakhnath's Amarauga Shasan, analysis of popular myths, and interviews with Orissa's religious specialists and Naths. Now, Jagannath's name and cult, as we all know, solidify around the 13th, 14th centuries during Bhanudev II, and the periods preceding it are syncretically fecund. The Nath Guru Motshendranath lived during the 10th century. The traditions of Pancharatra and Bhagavad Puran merged around the same time, and its Vaishnava Purushottam understanding subordinated regional Orissa deities through Ramanuj during the 11th century. The famous Nath practitioner Guru Gorakhnath preached during 11th, 12th centuries. The Nath texts consolidated around the 11th century. The Sharada Tilak Tantra, which combined ideas of Kashmiri Shaivism and Tantra, especially the grammar philosopher Bhartrihari, which figured the body as formed of different levels of sacred sound and the universes emanating from it, became popular in Orissa during the same time. Now, the same figure, Bhartrihari, was popular with the Oriya Santhas and appropriated as the 11th century Bengali Nath ruler turned saint Gopi Chand. Now, the Purushottam Kshetra Mahatya, the first pilgrimage manual glorifying Jagannath Dham or Puri, was added to the Skanda Purana as part of its Vishnu Khanda after the 12th century, and the Puri temple with its fourfold divinity, patronized as official state deities, settled during the 13th century. The reason I'm trying to lay this out is to suggest that these centuries embodied a most productive web of Nath, Tantra, Yoga, Bhakti, which together personified Jagannath. In the paper's first and second sections, I demonstrate Jagannath or Nath, Bhakti, Yoga, Tantra connections as Om's sonic embodiment. And in the third and fourth sections, I analyze the discursive congruences between the yogic body and Puri Dham's geography, known as Shankho-Khetra. Both bodies, that's the Nath body and the Puri's geographical body, are essentially imagined as produced through cosmic sonic vibrations of Om, with their origination in divine energy coiled in conches or shankhos, which the tantric yogic texts posit as Kundalini at the body's spinal base, and the Purushottam Kshetra Mahatya locates as the geometric layout of Jagannath Dham. The Gita literally refers to the body as Kshetra, and thus in one of its particular chapters, and thus Puri and the devotee both emerge as potent Shankho Kshetras. Also, in a secret 4-time daily ritual in the Jagannath temple known as Dhupa, the devotee's body is metaphysically converted into the gods and the temple's body. The Shunya Nad bodies or Kshetras of the yogi, the devotee, the Jagannath, and Puri are therefore made congruent. Now, Purushottam Kshetra Mahatya describes Jagannath as magnificently seated in a temple with 4 doors on a blue mountain, which is Nilachal or Nilgiri or Niladri, placed on a huge right side faced conch, much of it submerged in the sea and navel onwards throbbing with sacrality above the waters. Nilkantha is Shiva's name. Shakti-based Tantra talks about 4 petals in the body's basemost lotus chakra, while the right-turned conch is Narayan's emblem. Nilgiri on the conch again represents the lingam on Shakti's vagina. So Puri's geographical imagination thus includes the Shaivite Tantric Vaishnava imaginations, and this is captured in the city's various names. So Purushottam Kshetra, Vaishnav, Sri Kshetra, Shakti, and Nilachal, Shiva, Shaivite. These toponyms, I argue, however, are enabled by the more original name, Shankho Kshetra, and the imagination of the Conch Kundalini sound energy binds these. In Nath corporeal discourse, the 4-petal lotus within which the body's conch coiled feminine energy resides unravels in 8 parts. In Tantric emanation of sound, the navel is associated with the first discernibly felt vibration. And in Purushottam Kshetra Mahatya's pilgrimage Shankho-Khetra, similarly, there are 8 Shiva Shakti idols who protect the inner core of the conch's navel, the coiled part which houses Jagannath. Jagannath thus rises as a blue buzzing light at the exact central part of the Shiv Shakti formation. This corresponds to the yogic middle spinal nerve Shushumna, lying at the center of the male-female right-left spinal nerves, at whose base sleeps Conch Kundalini, who relaxes and sends up the first vibration through the nervous void or Shunya towards the cosmic cranium, Purush. Jagannath thus becomes the immediate embodiment of Purush Prakriti united life force, Nad or Pranav itself, the Shunya Purush. In a peculiar imaginary, therefore, Narayan or Jagannath as Nad emanates from the union of Shiva Shakti. Jagannath can therefore alternate in his representations as Shakti, as Shiva, as Shiv Shakti, as Narayan, as Harihar, that's Narayan and Shiva, and simply as the full void, Om. When during the 11th century Ramanuj offered his theory of qualified monism, he united the Pancharatra theistic Vishnuite tradition with Vedanta's monist Brahman. Purush thus emerging as the eternal soul, Prakriti his ever-changing feminine aspect, and their united form filling the devotee's inner body space as Purushottam. Purushottam, a Vishnuite tantric icon, is then defined, echoing Gita's configurations of Krishna as Nad Brahman, the original sound vibration in the Pancharatra tradition. Now, the conch or the shank or kundalini emerges as a distinct idea in these Nath, Jagannath, and body pilgrimage imaginings, with its 3.5 or 4 coils expanding into a tantric devotional discourse which ties sound, cosmic emptiness or shunyata, the Nath body, and DT Jagannath. How? So, 4 levels of the word, we find in the tantras, which is Pora at the inner, Pashyanti in the navel, Madhyama chest, Vaikhari tongue. 4 levels of sound, that is O, U, followed by Chandrabindu. The 4 Nath Shunyas, that's Shunya, Ati Shunya, Mahashunya, Sahaja Shunya. 4 states of being, that's Sthula or gross, Sukshma or subtle, Karan or deep sleep, and Turiya or the transcendental. The Pancharatra Bhagavat Chaturvyu Narayan, who are Sankarshan, Vasudeva, Aniruddha, Pradyumna, and the fourfold Jagannath himself, Jagannath, Balabhadra, Subhadra, Sudarshan. In later narrative traditions, Vasudeva and Shankarshan become the brothers Jagannath and Balabhadra. The wooden idol or Daru Brahma of Jagannath becomes the literal manifestation, therefore, of the 4th ontological state, Turiya, as Parabrahma. Daru Brahma, therefore, becomes Parabrahma. Now, Sankarshan literally means attraction or gravity, Adhar Shakti. Vasudeva further rests with the Sheshnag or Ananta, and Vishnu Narayan becomes the epitome of cosmic holding together or protection, with the conch as its immediate symbol. During ritual worship too, we know that the conch is propitiated as Adhar Shaktaya Namaha, which means restorative power. So like the conch depicts Narayan's persona, Ananta's coiling is represented in Puri's layout as Shankokhetra, protecting the inner navel, Narayan's Sankarshan power, holding his Jagannath self. Narayan's form as Vasudev thus converges with the power of the conch sound as Om and rises as hallowed vibration as the conch's navel. And among the 4 kshetras in Orissa, symbolized by Vishnu's 4 weapons, Shankha Kshetra, that's Puri, emerges as most sacred. Now, Orissa's Naths have not been written about extensively, although there are many Oriya Nath texts, especially of the 13th, 14th centuries, the most ancient Oriya literature being about Gorakhnath's compositions, and several literary texts mentioning Naths as a prominent group. Mochendranath was born in Orissa, and Gorakhnath is said to have meditated in Orissa's forests, gathering around him followers who later established Nath lineages and ashrams. Naths understand yoga simply as Omkar or Pranav sadhana in the body, and their philosophy had considerable influence on Oriya Santhas and the Panchasakha practice. Nath's embodied cultivation of sound is intrinsically tied to understandings of shunyata, voidness, figured in Orissa's context as DT Jagannath himself. Drawing from the Naths, Oriya Santhas divide the body into 6 circular energy centers along the spine, and among 72,000 nerves identify 3 main ones: the right-sided Ida, symbolizing male energy, the left Pingala, female, and the 2 unite in the central Shushumna, which carries their sexual vibration through the nervous void. In Nath cosmology, this energy travels in the yogi's body as a reverse flow, meets at the eyebrow center, and goes up to a final cranial slit, leading to Shunya. In the chakra imagination too, the coiled serpentine female energy at the spinal base travels up to meet Shiva at the cranium. As the nerves are cleaned and emptied through yogic processes of breath control, the male-female energy union vibrates as Om throughout the Shunya body. The Gorakha Shatak mentions this Nad as the most luminous Jyoti, Nad Jyoti approximating Jagannath, rising amidst the united force of 8 Shiva Shakti temples lining the innermost coil of the Shankokhetra and protecting Om or Shunya Purush. My Nath interlocutors in Kendrapara showed me characteristic threads they hang from their necks, with a Rudraksh representing Shiva, Chakra Kundalini, and a whistle known as Nadi representing Pranav. They explained that these are symbols of their bodies as sites of Purush Prakriti union resulting in Om sound, cultivated especially in the mouth cavity or khechar, connected via the ears to the cranium or great Shunya. This particular sonic cultivation makes Nath's bodies immortal, that is Mrityunjay, dead to the ordinary world, their subsequent waking up to cosmic truth, commemorated in Oriya Nath bards singing the refrain Jagore with their kendras. Now, the god of death, Yama, then loses power over Nath bodies as over Jagannath Dham, Puri, as narrated in the Purushottam Kshetra Mahatya, as a Shunya Shankhokshetra buzzing with Pranav. Puri's temple flag, as we know, therefore, thus bears the symbol of Chandrabindu or Nadabindu, the sonic buzz at the tapering end of the tripartite sound Om, the fourth level corresponding to Parabrahman. And one of my most important interlocutors in Puri, whose family have traditionally been associated with the study of Jagannath culture, also drew Jagannath's face for me in simple strokes, singing a stotram while sketching corresponding descriptions of Jagannath's eyes as O, lips as U, face structure as Mo, and the Chandrabindu shining on his bright forehead. He sang another sloka describing Jagannath's right eye as the sun embodied, left one as the moon, and it is instructive that in Nath cosmology, the Ida on the right side carries the feminine energy sun, and Pingala left, Shiva energy moon, and through their center, from the Conch Kundalini arises through Shushumna, meeting at the eyebrow center, which corresponds to the Chandrabindu in Jagannath's forehead. The construction of the Shankukhetros. Readings of the Purushottam Kshetra Mahatya or Puri in the Skanda Purana and Jagat Mongol, also a 16th century text by Gadadhar Das written as a Bengali translation of the Purushottam Kshetra Mahatya, and the esoteric physiology of the Nath body, especially described in the Amarauka Shasan, suggest direct similitudes in the imaginations of these Shankukhetros. Puri, shaped like a right bent conch, has its head to the west, in front a temple dedicated to Nilkantha Shiv. A great part is submerged in sea, and the main temple placed on its navel in the first conch twirl. In the second twirl resides Kopal Mochon Shiv, and in the third Lakshmi's own power Vimala. From Kopal Mochon to the conch's middle portion is considered Vishnu's favorite and the abode of Ardhashoni Devi, who drinks half the water during the archetypal epochal disaster or pralay, embodying Jagannath Dham's indestructibility or immortality. Now, these are obviously all descriptions I'm giving from the Skanda Puran, the Purushottam Kshetra Mahatya. In order to protect this Antar-Vedi, on the innermost sanctum of the conscious coils which holds Jagannath, there are 8 temples with Shakti embodiments and their Shiva counterparts. Parvati is said to have expanded in 8 forms: Mangala, Vimala, Sarva Mangala, Ardhasini, Lamba, Kalaratri, Kamakhya, and Bhavani. In one mythical version, Parvati requested Shiva to accompany her, and in another, Shiva requested Vishnu to allow him to always be with his Antaryami or soulmate, that is his equivalent divinity, Jagannath, in Puri, and expanded in 8 forms, who are Kopal Mochon, Kam, Kshetrapal Maheshwar, Markondeshwar, Visheshwar, Nilkantha, and Boteshwar. In other tantric constructions, the Shankhokshetra has 7 concentric folds, one on each side of the 3.5 twirled conch. Again, it is instructive that the Nath text, Amarauka Shasan, also describes Kundalini conch as having 3.5 coils. The innermost coil, full of consciousness, has the navel with Jagannath seated, the outer layer of which is hexagonal, embodying the conjunction of the downward and upward facing cosmic female-male representing triangles or Shatkon, and the immediately protecting fold guarding Jagannath has 8 petals inlaid with 8 forms of the goddess and her consort Shiva. They are, again, in other depictions, Darbashini, Mahavajreshwari, Sharnabhairavi, Bhadrakali, Bhubaneshwari, Mahakali, Ghoria, Shitala, Jogeshwari, and the Shiva forms Agneshwar, Boteshwar, Khetrapaleshwar, Chakreshwar, Boikunteshwar, Pataleshwar, Ishaneshwar, and Lokeshwar. The following outer fold is a square depicting the blue mountain Nilkantha, and around it are 8 more Shiva Shakti couples, then a lotus, and the final fold, the conch's shell. The shell's broad end lies at Loknath temple in the west, eastern tip at Baleshwar temple, Shargodda to its south, and Indradumna tank to its northeast. These various combinations of Shiv Shakti couplings point to the notion of Purush Prakriti union embodied in Puri's entire physical space, which results in and protects their united form as the luminous center Om or Jagannath himself. Now, in the body, there are 10 important nerves in Nath anatomy, of which the distinguishing yogic symbol is the Shankhini or the conch nerve, with an ending in the inus. Now, this is described in a number of Nath songs as the curved duct or the crooked channel. The Shankhini itself coils as Kundalini, elongates through the body chakras with the right exercises. The Mooladhar, an empty emblem of earth, where Shankhini rests between the inus and the sexual organ, is imagined as a 4-petal lotus, a red center placed within a yellow square with 8 shining spears. Its center is an inverted triangle representing the vulva with 3 circles around it, and inside which stands the self-existent linga, around which Kundalini coils 8 times. The obvious corporeal links of the Nath body and Jagannath Dham are clear. One of Narayan's quadruple forms is Shankarshan, representing earthy powers of holding together the Jagannath temple like Anantanag, and so is the Kundalini, the Adhar Shakti. Number one. Number two, the temple has 4 doors, the Mooladhar, 4 petals, which are initially turned downward and get stimulated through yogic practice, just as the temple doors open for the devout. Number three, the Mooladhar center unites the conched vulva, Kundalini and Lingam, like the Nilkantha hill stands on the right turned conch. Number four, both the temple and the body bases are literally conch formations, Shankakhetros. And number five, like the Kundalini coils 8 times or 3.5 times but expands in 8 forms, there are 8 Shiva Shakti temples protecting the innermost center of the Dham. The Antarvedi houses deity Jagannath, and then in the Nath body, the subtlest bust resulting from Kundalini's aroused union with the male principle. Jagannath temple arises from the Shanko's navel, and in Nath cosmology, in the middle of the navel, a wheel of 10 conduits unite, which includes the 3 main nerves and the receptacle of all bodily currents. Om thus reverberates exactly from the navel region. Thus, through the most luminous empty center, which is Shushumna in the body and the temple sanctum, rises Shunya Purush Jagannath, Om Nath, moving straight up, navel onwards to the Bindu point in the yogic body's forehead. And Jagannath's head is itself also marked by the Nada Bindu, the main temple symbol. My final section is a short one called Gorakhnath and Jagannath. Several legends, texts, and popular memories connecting Jagannath and Gorakhnath embody the philosophy of Shunyata and immortality. Following the general discursive tenor, in a myth not yet written about, Gorakhnath reaches Jagannath's doorstep, wakes him up to his true self, not limited by the sedentary Narayan representing restorative sacrality, but alerting him to his yogic essence, the renunciate Shiva or Narayan. This indicates Orissan Vaishnavism's peculiarly embroiled relationship with yoga and tantra, Narayan's spontaneous transformations to Shiva Shakti. The awakened Jagannath is coeval with the tantric geographies of the cultivated Nath body and the deity's temple. In one such recollection, Jagannath's seat once suddenly vibrated, and in a meditative trance, he realized that Gorakhnath was approaching his doorstep. He came up to the door to greet Gorakhnath and invite him inside. At this point, Gorakhnath blowed on his nadi and said, "A Nath is facing a Nath. Brahma is facing Brahma. Nad is facing Nad. Then what is the need for a temple?" The Nadi represents Shiva Shakti or Purush Prakriti union and sounds their love as the eternal Om. This claim is thus about Gorakhnath reminding Jagannath about their equivalence as Pranav, and that is why Jagannath's seat also vibrates, alert to his yogic essence as Brahma or Pranavatanutharam. In another version, Gorakhnath, when visiting Jagannath Dham, is disappointed in the deity's weird, almost unfinished form, since he did not resemble the Nath god Bhairav, whom Gorakhnath was waiting to worship. As he returned to light the dhuna, however, it refused to be lit. Finding this odd, Gorakhnath returned to the temple when an illuminated smoke emanating from Jagannath's person rushed to the door and appeared to Gorakhnath as Bhairav himself, the tantric deity Bhairav. The story signals the tantric yogic devotional continuum of the Jagannath cult, brought especially to life by Nath configurations of Jagannath or Bhairav as the cosmic personification of Omkar. A dhuna is thus perpetually lit to the temple's right side and known as Dhuni Narayan. This Nath pyre is visited by Jagannath every Rath Yatra, as Jagannath had promised to Gorakhnath that his devotees would need to worship Gorakhnath before his own darshan. Jagannath temple door is marked as the threshold in both narratives, untamed by mortal domesticity, where Lord Jagannath discovers his yogic self and Nath identity as Pranav, either through Gorakhnath's waking call or his spontaneous realization. So, in conclusion, I have thus tried to argue that the specific discursive imaginations tie the Nath yogi with Jagannath, the yogic body with the pilgrimage space, both constituted like the coiled conch, and also fused together devotional modalities of bhakti, tantra, and yoga. While these religiosities have been conceptualized as seemingly different concerns of South Asian studies, to quote Patton Burchett, the understanding of Jagannath as Pranavatanudharam effectively coheres them. The Nath Jagannath similitudes and anatomical imaginations of the body and pilgrimage as embodiments of Pranav bind texts like the Gita, the Vaishnava Pancharatra tradition, Shaiva Shakta Tantros, Nath epistemology, and the lyrical mythical world associating Nath and Jagannath ontology and geography. Jagannath may thus be conceptualized as an ideal Nath yogi, placed on the Shankakhetro and primordially vibrating as Pranav. This defines bhakti in Orissa as always imbricated with the tantric yogic cosmology of the cultivated body. Thank you. I'd end there. Thank you for your attention.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Thank you, Sukanya. I think I'm sorry, actually lost you for about a minute or so towards the end because of poor connectivity this side. I hope actually others can hear me. So Sukanya's paper, which was on the architecture of Bhakti cosmology relating body, deity, and pilgrimage, is now open for discussion. And please raise your questions. Please ensure that your questions are short, and so that she can respond to whatever queries you have. And we would initially have 10 minutes for discussion if everybody agrees. That was the original format. So now her paper is open for discussion because we do not want to go to the end. By that time, people would have forgotten her finer points. So I now invite questions, and I'm sure actually the coordinators can conduct the floor. Can you hear me, Sukanya? Just a nod.
Yes, I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, in that case, please, go ahead, ask your questions. I think
Thank
it
you. Thank
maybe
you.
yeah.
Yeah,
Can
thank you, Sukanya.
you go ahead?
Yeah, I was, this was very interesting when you talked about this incident of Gorakhnath approaching the doors of the Jagannath temple and asking Jagannath to wake up. Yeah, in the Natha Yogi songs, "Wake up, oh mother" is a line which keeps occurring frequently. So, do you have anything to say? I mean, have you read the balladic narratives on of the Natha Yogis as well when you were doing this paper on this connection between the Natha Tantra Yoga tradition and Jagannath, or Jagannath's manifestation as Natha Yogi?
I'm very glad thank you for your question. I'm very glad you asked it because I've been very lucky to have read your paper, which Siddharth had generously shared with me. And yes, the connection I'd like to draw there is about this "Wake Up, Oh Mother" call, and that's why I kept using the quotes when talking about waking up. Is what really particularly struck me is there are two balladic references to waking up. One is Gorakhnath waking Matsyendranath up, his guru, up when he's fallen in terms of his mortal behavior, and the other one is of course Gopi Chand's mother waking him up to the truth of renunciation rather than the sort of bondage of material life. And in both instances, what is interesting is that what is socially maybe ostensibly an inferior position, waking up a superior position. In one case, the devotee waking up the guru, and in another case, the mother waking up the son, or a woman waking up a man. And here too, it's Gorakhnath waking Jagannath up, or one could say a mortal, well, a devotee figure waking up the divine figure. And this precisely is made possible because ultimately it is all about, in this kind of a discursive cosmology, it is all about the already awakened features of the devotee himself as divine. So Gorakhnath is Jagannath, or the woman and the man, or the mother and the son, or the disciple and the guru, whichever way we may call it. It's actually they are all awakened to the same one buzzing light, or Jyoti, or Nada Jyoti, whatever we may call. So this waking up, you are very right, is a very important thematic, and that's why I very quickly alluded to the doorstep being a very important metaphor, therefore, because this doorway is not only about the temple, but it is about that that threshold which marks out the unrealized and the realized, which ultimately talks about one whole, or that's Purnam, however we may want to call it. Does that really answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And as Professor Danta said, your explanation of the architecture of the Jagannath temple and the placing of the various deities around the Jagannath temple. You know, I had my mother-in-law sitting by my side listening to your lecture because she wanted to have an idea of how the scholars look at all these, you know, the placements of all these temples inside the Jagannath temple. How do they approach this? And that was quite a presentation, I must say. Siddharth, do you have a question for Sukanya?
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Sukanya. So two queries actually. One is about the narrative structure, and the other would be a kind of a half a query. About the narrative structure, I'm not familiar with the Nath literary corpus as such. See, if I got you right, the idea is that Gorakhnath comes, Jagannath he fails to recognize or acknowledge as Bhairava. Then Gorakhnath goes away, and the dhuni is not being lit. And then Jagannath comes, and the conflict is, the tension is resolved with Jagannath manifesting as Bhairava, as Gorakhnath coming to recognize him as Bhairava. The contrasting narrative structure, I do not know how justified will that be, the term contrasting, but still, then I think the first initial thought that it might be contrasting. You find that contrasting narrative structure in Dadhyata Bhakti Rasamrita, in many Vaishnava stories, where the devotee goes to the temple. There is also a misrecognition here, but the misrecognition is by the priests of the temple. They fail to recognize the devotee, or how elevated a devotee he is, or she is, or he is mostly. So then again, the devotee comes away from the temple space, and that narrative tension gets resolved, this time with the god recognizing the devotee and instructing the temple establishment, the priests, to go and meet the devotee and arrive at a similar recognition. So, if the narrative structure is about a point of recognition, and where the tension arises out of misrecognition, this is quite similar to this few centuries, the narratives which are spread across the sects and different few centuries. But within that recognition misrecognition play, certain variants come out. So this
Thank you
is
very
this
much.
is this is an observation. This may not help, but yeah, for whatever the worth it is. So how do you, I mean, what I would like to hear more about from you is that, do you what do you think about this recognition and misrecognition element? Do you find it playing out elsewhere in the Nath, in your ethnography, in course of your ethnography, did you encounter, or in the text that you have come across, did you encounter it? That's question number one. The query, the half a query is, very quickly, it's fascinating the way the body and the geography are kind of analogous to each other in the arguments. Do you see, or have you encountered a where whether there is a mismatch between the body and the geography? Are the texts, do you find a text somewhere struggling to make the analogy hold?
Right. Yes. Thanks, Siddharth. Those are very perceptive questions. I'll try to answer both actually. The first one is about the recognition, misrecognition bit. Although you say it's just an observation about the devotee being misrecognized, I think I can sense a very serious, something very serious happening there, because, and of course, one very important recognition, misrecognition story we are all aware of is also of Mirabai not being let into a temple. It's of course a misrecognition of a different kind, where Mirabai is not allowed to enter the temple, and then she says that, but I thought all of us are women here. We are all aware of this. I'm not repeating. But what is important here is that in one case, the priest misrecognizes, and then the god alerts the priest about the devotee's purity, goodness, virtue, whatever. Clearly, what is happening here is that it's quite obvious also that the dualism is being maintained between the god and the devotee. Because God, firstly, is in a superior position compared to the priest to tell him, number one. Number two, the god realizes the devotee's purity is distinct from the god's own person. But here in Gorakhnath, and that's why it relates to what Dr. Bedamatta was, Dr. Bedamatta's question and what I was thinking about it, is that here Gorakhnath is the one who's helping God recognize himself. And that is because Gorakhnath and Jagannath, or that monist element is very strong here, because both are the same. And the Naths have a very interesting sort of way to talk about this, which is that there is Jivatma, there is Paramatma, but both are sharing one Atma, which is water. So if water is the common element, then the Jivatma is the river, Paramatma is the sea. But water is the common element. So there is a clear monist strand there, in distinction to the other misrecognition that you are able to very intuitively sort of chart out, which is of the god recognizing the devotee. So that's my, cursory sort of the first.
Okay, Sukanya. Yeah, Sukanya.
Yes.
Besides the Amarabhusasana, did you have an opportunity to read any Bengali texts in the Natha tradition? No, because I would like to know if there are some.
Yes,
because I believe that the Gopi Chand or the Govinda Chandra ballad was actually a variant of the original Bengali song or a story, or possibly which came down from East Bangladesh, present day Bangladesh. So I was just curious about any texts in Bengali of the Natha tradition.
Right. Before I answer, am I audible to all of you?
Yes.
Before I answer that, can I just quickly respond to Siddharth's second point, and I'll come to this point.
Sure.
The second point, Siddharth, that you had is about a mismatch, and there is a very glaring mismatch actually. And for the sake of one kind of presentation, I obviously did not want to talk about it, but I'm glad you raised it, because it is actually how to put it? It's about a very important location problem in the chakra imagination. Because in the way in which the Nath yogis talk about the chakra layout, and in the way in which the Skanda Purana describes Puri's layout, there is a locational problem. So the navel is a very important feature in the Puri's Puri's geographical imagination. The Shankanabhi being called it's actually called the Shankanabhi Mandal, where the temple is laid out. But in the Nath worldview, more than the navel, it is the Mooladhar which is the most important thing. And therefore, the entire layout of the conch in Puri is around the navel, but the layout in the human physiology is around the Mooladhar. So this is a very important distinction. It may seem like not a very big problem, but it becomes a very big problem, because in the chakra epistemology, if there is a very big shift in where the locale is being imagined, then the entire structure can actually fall. So how exactly these two are, I would imagine that the two are actually still linked, because the Shankini is being described in these songs as a crooked duct. And because it's a sort of crooked duct, it has a much more, and also in these Bengali baul, very famous baul songs, it's always the metaphor of the river which goes aake baake, as in, it has a very flowing but also crooked path, such that it can traverse different chakras, not in a linear fashion, but in a more tangential sort of way. So that, if that answers your question somewhat, there is a very match, but
and we will continue to talk about it through the remaining sessions, and probably we'll come back to it about that recognition, misrecognition point, and how that's connected to theology, the monist and dualist. That will come back to probably in the roundtable.
Yes. And for Dr. Bedamatta's question, very quickly, yes, I'm aware of course, Gopi Chand is a very, it's a very important ballad for the, the medieval Bengali literature. The Nath text that I had found particularly very interesting, I can't go into very big details, but I didn't talk about it because it is an anonymous text. It does not have a, I just found it in one of the Nath, very important Nath temples in Hooghly. I've mentioned it in my main paper in the footnote. It's a longish sort of anecdote there, which also actually talks about how that entire ashram comes into being. And the origin story is based on a conch. So how a conch is discovered, how the conch flesh is scooped out by two birds who want to, there's a longish story, as in there's a pregnant bird who wants to eat conch meat, tells her husband, the bird goes, dies in the fight with the Mahashank, which actually embodies his inability to perform yogic perfection. And then the death in that sense, not literal physical death. And then the woman has two children who grow up, who bring the conch back for her, scoop out its meat. Again, this scooping out is associated with cleaning of the nervous channels in the body. And once that scooping out is complete, the conch is kept in that place on the top of a tree and during Pralay. And once again, so Pralay becomes a very important trope, again, like the Skanda Puran, Jagannath Dham stories, where the dham remains after Pralay. Similarly, these ashrams, like the Nath body, remain after Pralay. And during Pralay, this conch starts sounding. And that's when Gorakhnath, Mokshendranath, and all the yogis join there and build the ashram. So the conch remains, a very central metaphor binding these imaginations. And so that is what had actually originally struck me about Puri being called the Shankho-Khetro. And very quickly I had to say, I feel that this term, this toponym, actually engulfs and helps materialize many other names like Sri Khetro, like Purushottam Khetro, etc. Because the imagination is held by the very original term Shankho Khetro. I don't know if again I answered your question, but
that was very interesting. In fact, that particular mention of that origin story, that was.
Yes, I do mention it in the paper, though.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So, these are very exciting questions. This is actually the reason why we meet. And one of the things that I would be personally interested in is how did the residents of Puri respond to the claims made on Jagannath by the Nathpanthis? There are secret rituals even today in the Puri temple, rituals to which others are not exposed, and then maybe we will talk about this one